Jesse Cook is magical. The way he makes a guitar rattle and burn is an impressive skill that can only be appreciated with your eyebrows up. Once I went to see him at the Montreal Jazz Festival with a friend who spied our future husband in the crowd. They're married now with a cute kid, doing their best to do that whole live happily ever after thing. See? Jesse Cook is magical. Yo, welcome and good greetings to my Summer Lair. I'm your host, Sammy Younan, and while I do not have the rhythm to dance to Jesse Cook's music, I thankfully have the ears to deeply appreciate it. Jesse was all set to embark on Tempest 25, a spring tour celebrating 25 years since he released his debut album. Tempest was his attempt at making a musical career and life for himself. Instead, of course, due to the current pandemic, he is home, and that tour is on hold like much of our lives. Bet when he released that album 25 years ago, whatever he expected his life to be, he never saw this unfolding. So, he's working while he waits. This spacious conversation covers his globetrotting adventures, McDonald's, Peter Gabriel, as well as the sonic discoveries once he started taking the unbeaten path and making what he terms as his weird music. Before we get into all of this, here's Tempest, his first single, nervously released to the world, re-recorded in his home 25 years later. Oh yo, you'll want to turn this up. This is magical. Just audio, so you don't have to wear pants. It's pretty simple.
That's good. That's good. I'm already in pants. I'm just for the record. I want that out. That's important information.
Okay, we're getting to the dirt of the interview already. I haven't even asked the first
That's right.
question.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Jump right in. All right. Fire away.
When can we expect your collaboration with Britney Spears? Apparently, she's a big fan. Is that the word on the street?
That I yeah, I don't know. I got all these sort of text messages or I guess they're Facebook messages from fans saying, hey, Britney Spears is your fan, and I was like, what are they talking about? So I followed the link and I found this post she'd done, and it was a crazy thing because she got 1 million likes or something on that post where she's sort of sitting there doing exercise on the beach to my music, but she forgot to tag me. Thank you, Brittany. That would have been
Oh,
really helpful for us
yeah.
lesser known artists. So, but it was, it was kind of fun. It was kind of
Hmm.
a surreal moment.
So I guess now, when you do talk about how cool your fans are and how appreciative and how amazing they are, you're including Britney in this fine group of people.
You know what, my fans are all over the map. It's trying to figure out what my demographic is has been a lifelong journey. I have no idea. Like it's so weird, and it seems like there'll be like grandparents and grandkids and everything in between at our shows, and it depends on where we go. Like when we were in China, there wasn't one person in the audience over 30 the entire time. They were all these sort of mostly young guys, sort of guitar heads coming to the shows. Europe, it was also it skewed way younger. In the States, our crowd can be a little bit older because I guess we get a lot of interest from PBS down there, and I guess the PBS audience is a little bit of an older crowd.
Oh yeah.
So it really just depends where you go and how they hear about you, how they sort of end up finding about my weird music. But the fact is, I'm just happy that anybody, you know, here's what we do. It's hard in this world. If you're
Yeah.
not doing pop music, it's hard to get the word out. So I'm just happy when anybody finds out what we're
Yeah, including Britney Spears.
doing. Yes, exactly.
With world music, it's almost universal because I know you have like a broader kind of genre that you exist in. But if growing up here in North America, right, we always aim rock and roll and rap music and pop music to young people, right? Like pop music kind of goes to the teen girls a little bit.
Yeah, for sure.
And we kind of
Yeah.
divide things demographically that way by age and stuff. But when you go out to countries like Spain or Egypt,
Hmm.
it's just music. They don't. There's no young or
Yeah.
older or anything. You know what I mean? And I wonder if that's part of what influences the crowd that show up to your shows.
You know what? It's funny. I don't know. They have pop music in other parts of the world, right? Everybody
Hmm.
listens to pop music, and generally, it's more young people listening to pop. But I also think like older people grew up on their pop, on the pop music, whatever. If you grew up on the Beatles or the Stones or Zeppelin or whatever it was the pop music of your age. I sort of feel like to get into music like what I'm doing, you have to be the kind of person who is a little bit comfortable kind of getting off the beaten path. You know what I mean? If like first of all, there's no lyrics, there's no singing in most of my songs. It's a lot of instrumental music. It's music where I'm fusing together stuff from all over the world, and people have to be ready to kind of go on a bit of a trip with us. I always sort of joke that people when they come to the show, I hope they bring their passports and get their flu shots up to date. You know what I mean? We're
Yeah.
we're gonna take a trip. So it's a strange kind of music. And the other thing, as I said before, there's year early in my career, I had a song on sort of pop radio. I did a cover of a Crowded House song called "Fall at Your Feet," which went up to #2 in Canada on the pop charts, which was really exciting. But other than that, I mean, that was a real exception in my career. Most of my music is not at all the kind of thing you could play on pop radio, and so it's really, it's a weird thing. You get people who, on the one hand, there are way less people who hear about me, but on the other hand, the fans I have are incredibly dedicated because they don't hear you everywhere. Like there's some bands where you're on the radio all the time, and if you stop being on the radio, they forget about you. Whereas with my crowds, they never heard me everywhere. They always had to kind of find me, hunt me down. We get people flying in from all over the world to go to concerts. We'll be doing a tour of the states. We'll be in, Des Moines, Iowa, or something, and we'll get people from Germany in the crowd, or but
Yeah.
we flew in from China. Like really, wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
On any given night, there'll be like 30% of our audience will have driven 5 hours or something to see us. So it's nice. It's nice to have dedicated fans for sure, and I kind of feel like it's part and parcel of being off the beaten path.
Does this group of fans that come from all over the place, especially places like Des Moines, Iowa, do they bring different sounds with them to you as well? So then, as you make your music and give it back to them, they kind of give you new sounds and new rhythms, and they kind of give it back to you.
Um, sometimes, I mean, it's funny because I feel like, it's hard to find a place in the world where you don't get to hear as many sounds as you do right here in Canada. Do you know what I mean? Like it's hard, you're not going to go to Des Moines, Iowa, and find as many different types of music as you
Mm-hmm.
can just growing up in Toronto. Like Toronto,
Yeah.
is this incredible multicultural city. It's our big claim to fame. I mean, I have to admit, when I was a kid in the '70s growing up in Toronto, it was a bit boring. It was not nearly as exciting as it has become, and it's immigration really that has kind of made this city exciting to be in. It's got something that's really unique. It's not just that we have five Chinatowns and a huge, sort of Greek town and several little Italies and all of that. It's not just that. It's that we've got huge communities in just about any group, like whatever you're interested in. If you're interested in South Asian music, there's 500,000 people from South Asia living here.
Yeah.
If you're interested in, like, the largest Asian city in the world outside of Asia, that's the fourth largest Greek city in the world, including cities in Greece. So whatever you're into, if you're into Brazilian rhythms, there's not just one samba school. There's like five or six different ones. You can take your pick. It's fantastic. For someone like me who does global fusion, it's like the place to be. So I love it here.
Picking up in that thread of like global fusion, has this recent like stay at home experience during this pandemic, has it been difficult for a guy who put out an album called Nomad? Huh.
That's actually a good question. I never thought of it that way. Um, Oddly enough, uh, and I say this, but I realize several of my artist friends who I have been keeping in touch with are saying very similar things, which is for musicians, being at home all day is not unfamiliar to us. When we're not out touring, we're sitting at home. And all these records that I've made, 10 studio albums and I don't know how many concert specials, like all that stuff I do at home. I lock myself up in the studio for months on end and I make records. And so kind of spending the day around the house is totally comfortable for me. And it was, yeah, losing, having all those tours suddenly being postponed to, we're not even sure when. Initially, we postponed the tours to the fall,
Mm-hmm.
but now we're not even sure if we're going to be able to have concerts. So, we're kind of in this limbo. But in the meantime, I'm just kind of getting back into doing what I do that other part of my life when I'm not touring, which is, making new music and, being in the studio. The lovely part of it has been that my kids have been staying home too, because, they have homeschooling them, and I've been getting to spend a lot more time with them, which has been great because, my kids are kind of in the early teens, and I'm starting to realize they're not going to be around for the rest of my life. They're going to be gone soon, and I'm not sure how many more chances like this I'm going to get to spend as much time with them. So I've been really loving that.
Yeah, and in terms of you getting like back into like some of the creativity, you recently put out a call to action on Facebook where you sang a melody and you asked people to record like 30 seconds, I think it was, on on their cell phone in front of nature,
Yeah,
basically.
yeah.
Are you starting to get some of those videos back from people
Oh,
who have?
oh my God! This is on Friday. This is just this Friday. I thought, oh, let me just see how this goes. I had written a song and I had this part that was kind of sung, and I sang it. I overdubbed a bunch of tracks, and I got my daughter to sing on it. And I was like, wow, this is great. It'd be great if we could get more people. And I'm thinking, what artists do I know in different parts of the world that I could get to sing on this? And then I kind of went, what am I doing? Like, I should just ask my fans. Why does it have to be an artist? It could be anybody. And so I just thought, well, let's see what happens. So I sang this thing and I put it on Facebook, and my inbox just went crazy. In fact, just before you called, have for the last 3 days, I've been taking these. I haven't even got to editing. I'm taking these videos and just downloading them and trying to catalog them so I know, what countries they're from. People I've got videos from China and Bangladesh and South Africa and Switzerland and Greece, everywhere. The United States and Canada, of course. But it's been kind of amazing. I'm kind of, overwhelmed by, first of all, people's generosity, but also how fearless they are. Like I sort of realized, a lot of these people are clearly not singers. They're probably people who don't even sing in a group or a choir or anything. They're just, and to kind of put themselves out there and videotape themselves singing, record the audio, and send it off, not knowing what's going to happen. That takes a huge amount of courage. So,
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna, I will try my best not to let anybody feel embarrassed, but I think it's going to sound amazing. And if not, just the concept alone of trying to get all these voices together. The difficulty is that I didn't give clear enough instructions, because a lot of people just sang the melody on their own without using my voice as a guide. So they're singing it in a different key in a different time,
Oh,
and
yeah.
so, and then other people made up lyrics to the song, and
Yeah.
changed it, and so it's trying to make that all become one big choir is going to be I got my work cut out for me.
Yeah, I
That's
might
for
have to use auto-tune or do a remix or something after, like put out the original
sure.
song.
There's going to be a lot of, yes, creative editing happening. That's for sure.
We've already kind of touched upon this as we've talked, but like you clearly have a passion for the world and all these different cultures and different countries. Do you feel that this pandemic, because it's so worldwide and it's affected so many different lives in so many different cities and countries, do you feel that it's made the world smaller? Is smaller the right word?
Well, it's funny. I feel like my whole life the world has been getting smaller. I mean, in terms of travel time and communication, the world is smaller today than France was 200 years ago. You know what I mean? That you can go anywhere and and see anything, and it seems like every year that gets smaller and smaller. Now, growing up, we never saw, unless you were part of some kind of sort of elite group that went to see foreign films with subtitles. Most people never saw other people's cultures, especially if you're in an English speaking country. If you're growing up in some other part of the world, you got to see American movies, because American movies went everywhere. But, and living in Canada, we wouldn't see Iranian films or
Mm-hmm.
Chinese films or whatever. Whereas I sort of feel like, my kids are nuts about, Japanese anime and K-pop. If you watch Netflix now, we're getting to see films from all over the world.
Yeah.
They're just television, like regular television shows. I just finished watching a TV series from Turkey, and before that, it was something from Denmark, and I just was like, wow, this is amazing. The world really, and I kind of feel like that's a good thing, because I do feel like it's easy when we get kind of wrapped up in our own little world to start feeling a sense of fear of the unknown, fear of people in other cultures. And I grew up in the Cold War, and I know how crazy that whole fear of the unknown can become.
Us and them as well.
Yeah, exactly. So I just sort of feel like the more we realize, like I was in Saudi Arabia about a year and a half ago. I played the first ever jazz festival, and it might be actually the last jazz festival in Saudi Arabia.
You shut it
But
down.
that's another story. But anyway, I remember I had never been to Saudi Arabia before that, and I remember we're driving along, on the highway to somewhere, and we stop, and there's like a Tim Hortons at the gas
Yes.
station on the highway,
Yeah.
and there's a McDonald's next to it, and everybody's in there having their happy meals, and dressed like they're from Saudi Arabia, but living lives that are pretty much the same as what we are doing at home. And you realize, you know all of these preconceived notions that we had were completely shattered in that moment, right? Like, it's just not, we are way more similar than we realize, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So I do find that the more we know about each other, the more we will recognize each other's shared humanity and stop being so crazy about all that stuff.
Yeah. Well, this idea of like shared humanity and all of us eating the same McDonald's, basically. I have a friend of mine who's. This should be like
So
part of the. It should influence the new album, I think, right?
I hate to think that McDonald's is a thing that's uniting us. That's really not what I'm hoping to say, but it did seem to come out that way. I apologize.
No,
Go ahead.
it was a happy meal, though, right? That's the whole point. We're all happy. So
Until afterwards.
yes,
Until the indigestion set in. Yeah, go ahead.
yes. But I have a friend who's a famous comedian, and when he travels the world, he's performed in places like Saudi Arabia and Vietnam and India and China and places like that. To prepare for his shows, he kind of does this, I guess, for lack of a better term, anthropological study, and he'll visit the shopping malls, and he'll just wander the shopping malls for a little bit just to see what the fashion is at and how people are
Yeah,
interacting, hear some of the music in
yeah,
some of the stores, that kind
yeah.
of thing. And it's kind of a way for him to kind of like quickly download some of the culture a little bit, you know? Do
Yeah.
you do the same thing too when you travel and is there certain specific spots that you go to or places that you go to kind of see what the vibe is, the community vibe is?
Well, it sounds like he's very sort of methodical about it. I'm certainly not like that. I just kind of show up somewhere and wander around. Well, hopefully something close to the hotel is interesting. But yeah, I certainly, I end up kind of heading for the downtown center of the city anywhere I go, because there's always that area, and wherever it is, Shanghai or Vienna or whatever, there's that sort of big sort of central shopping area that everybody packs in. And
Yeah.
in some ways, it's kind of sad that you're in Shanghai and you're looking around, you're going, oh yeah, H&M, you know,
Yes.
and whatever, all the sort of big store chains, and you sort of feel like in the old days when I was a kid and we traveled, you'd get to Paris and it wouldn't be all the same store. You wouldn't see, Eaton's and Simpsons in the Bay and all that. You would see the French ones. You'd see Printemps and all these other stores. I do nowadays. I find wherever you go, it feels, yeah, like the sort of international language is kind of multinational corporations. You know what I mean? And they're all moving in, they're all selling the same products, we're all buying the same stuff, and as such it becomes a kind of common language, right? Like,
Hmm.
we all have the same phones. And what was interesting for me actually was when I got to China, though, how it's kind of its own ecosystem. That they have Alibaba and Baidu, and you can't access the internet, without finding some sneaky VPN system,
Yes.
and you end up realizing that being its own ecosystem, there's first of all, I couldn't pay for anything because they very few people would accept cash or even credit card. They thought credit cards were ancient history. They didn't know why I was walking around with a credit card. Everybody pays with their phone,
Hmm.
and it's nothing like the system we use. In fact, it seems much more secure. It's a thing where everybody just has this sort of barcode thing. You wave your phone in front of the barcode, and your phone, you tap in the amount of money in your bank account, sends that money to that barcode account, as opposed to that, them taking the money out of your account. You're the one sort of doing the action. So
Yeah.
there'll be a guy like on the street begging, and he'll have a little barcode, and you go up and you swing your phone by and give him some money. And unfortunately, as I wasn't Chinese, I didn't have a Chinese bank account or an Alipay system or any of that
Hmm.
stuff, and I couldn't even buy a Starbucks coffee. Like I was a desperate man the whole time I was there. I was begging for coffee
Yeah.
everywhere I went. I needed one of those barcodes.
Yeah. Even to like busk or something just to raise a few bucks for the coffee.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They couldn't pay. They couldn't give me any money. It was
Yeah.
kind of was a crazy thing. But
Yeah,
lucky people.
many years ago, I was in Kenya. I got to travel to a number of different villages and remote villages. And as you kind of go into these places, it's surreal because you can get a bottle of Coke or a can of Coke almost everywhere you go.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And you would figure like,
Exactly.
oh, we're like at the end of the world here. There's like not. But sure enough,
Yeah.
you'd go into some remote villages, only like maybe 100 people or a couple hundred people live there, and there's like a little canteen in the
Yeah.
corner selling Coke.
Yes. Exactly. And unfortunately, I don't want to bash multinational corporations, but they're not in the interest of worrying about public health. It's not their mandate, right? They're just
Mm-hmm.
there to sell you Coke. And unfortunately, when they have that much selling power, that I think at some point Coca-Cola decided that they wanted, what was it? Was it 2/3 of all the liquid consumed on the planet to be a Coke product? Whether
Mm-hmm.
it's Fruitopia or any of those things that they produce, right? All those different ranges of drinks, but
Yeah.
that starts to become an issue, right? Like I don't know why that I find that disquieting, but there we go. It just seems to me like, at the end of the day, they're really just wanting to make money, and I always sort of feel like whenever people get too excited about like saying, oh, we don't need government, let the free market take care of itself, I sort of go, I'm not sure that's a good idea. I think somebody
Yes.
needs to make sure that we're not going to be drinking Coke for breakfast. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like,
It doesn't go that well with Frosted Flakes.
exactly, exactly.
Speaking of like touring and kind of getting out and seeing the world, though, the Tempest 25 tour that was postponed, and like you said, you may not even be able to make up the dates in the fall now. But in general, when you were planning that tour, was that considered to be like a love letter or a thank you letter to your fans?
Actually, that's a beautiful way of putting it. Yeah, it was we wanted a celebration, right? It had been 25 years since I released Tempest independently, and so it's been 25 years of making records and touring around the world, and sort of developing this, as I said, this kind of fan base of people who had worked hard to find me, and I wanted to kind of go out there and tour and thank them, as you say. And it was going to start with the Canadian portion of the Tempest 25 tour, which would be 25 shows, celebrating 25 years. And we, at the end of it, we were going to play 5 shows, 5 nights in Montreal at the Montreal Jazz Festival, and we were going to film it. And then that was going to be a PBS special, which we would then go and tour in the United States as the American portion of the Tempest 25 tour, supporting the PBS special. So it was like this big plan. And I remember 2 weeks before we left, before we were supposed to leave on the Canadian tour, we were off in Vienna, in Austria, and we were just finishing that tour. We're sitting in a hotel lobby, and we're looking at the news, going, "My God, I wonder if this." At that time, it was still really mostly in China, and
Mm-hmm.
very few cases had come to Canada. And we're like, "I wonder if this is going to affect our tour." And I remember people at that time were still sort of saying, "No, no, it's never," because I guess we were still remembering SARS and how SARS, was relatively contained, right?
Mm-hmm.
It certainly affected Toronto more than most places, but it never became this huge pandemic. Anyway, 2 weeks later, exactly to the date, the tour was canceled, and then we realized it's not just the Canadian portion. That means, the tours in the fall and the tour of California in the summer, and the PBS special won't be done. Like everything sort of suddenly became put on hold, um, it was this kind of awful, surreal moment where you realize we really don't know. There's no precedent for any of us for this. The world, and then it stopped being about us. The whole world was going through it. Everybody's was kind of worrying about their jobs, and how they were going to eat, and I have to say, I'm very happy about, so far the Canadian government's reaction to this has been great. Most of my friends are musicians, and this whole CERB thing has been fantastic and simple and easy to access. And, my friends are all able to eat and pay their rent, and that's been great. Um, but, in terms of the future of the music industry and giving concerts and all that, I don't really know. None of us do at this point.
Yeah. It is going to be interesting. I think there's two challenges. The first is when you as musicians can go back and actually start performing. But then the flip
Yeah.
side of it is I don't know if people will feel comfortable going for a little while. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, I totally know what you mean.
So,
I think there has been discussions saying that until there's actually a vaccine, that maybe big concerts and sporting events and all those things that bring people together in large numbers are not going to be able to happen until there's actually a vaccine. We can't do that. Again, we don't know. We're still in
yeah.
the earlier part of this. At some point, I suppose, there will be more people who've had it who haven't, and hopefully, then the spread will slow way down because people will be immune to it, or we hope. But who knows? It's a big question mark.
Well, going full circle back to the tour and to this idea of a big question mark, you were reluctant to kind of put out Tempest, the album 25 years ago, and that's partly why you're doing this tour now. Like, did a plan eventually form now? Like, once you put this album out and it starts to gain momentum and you start going on tours and stuff, like, is goals the right word or like a direction basically of how your career went? Like, or are you just kind of now it's just still making it up as you go along? So you put out the album, PBS calls you, all right, let's do a special or two, why not? And you know what I mean? Are you just kind of just wandering around and just kind of bumping into stuff, opportunities?
Well, I'd like to think it's all my grand plan, but I'm sure that there's a certain amount of wandering around and bumping into things that happens too. I think you know, anytime as an artist, if you are doing real work, that means you're trying things that haven't been done before, and you certainly don't know if people are going to like it. If it's going to become successful, if you're going to have a career after the next record. There are a lot of one-hit wonders out there, and the fact that 25 years later, I'm still able to do this. In fact, we're touring more than I ever have, and I'm, touring more and more countries than I ever have. I sort of feel like that's amazing. That is certainly against the odds. I got really lucky. I feel like I kind of won the lottery in that regard. I've never had that kind of massive success. We talked about Britney Spears. I mean, I've never had that kind of pop success on that level, and I'm actually pretty happy about that. I can still walk down the street and buy milk at the corner store and nobody
Yeah.
bugs me. But then I can also play the Massey Hall of every city in Canada. In fact, almost in North America. And I feel like that's a pretty good situation. Like if I could play the Massey Hall or the whatever the sort of the big concert hall of every city in the world, I would be, I'd die happy. That would be like, that's the dream.
You were 22, right, when you put out Tempest?
No, actually, I was 30. I was quite
30,
old for
sorry.
this to start a career. Yeah.
So when you look at that 30-year-old Jesse Cook with the long hair and everything and putting that album out, what do
Uh-huh.
you now as an elder statesman? What do you say to that Jesse Cook? Like, because he was all nervous and he wasn't sure if this would work. You know what I mean? So now that you've had some success and you can still go to the grocery store and buy milk peacefully, and you've also toured, like, what do you say to that younger Jesse Cook?
Um, it's funny, you know what? I, I'm, I wouldn't change things. I sort of feel like it was a great ride. I worked really hard the whole time. I just kept trying to do good work, and in the early days, my influences I think were much more obvious. There was an influence of Peter Gabriel. There was an influence of the Gypsy Kings. I think all of that was much more clear in my work. As new records came out, you could see that I started becoming more and more inquisitive and trying things out on my own and doing things, sounds I'd never heard before, or trying fusions I'd never heard before. And and I feel pretty proud about it. I don't. There's nothing really I regret. There's nothing. You know, it's it's funny. I sort of think nobody when you become an artist, you don't do it because you're trying to you know uh, have a stable job. You do
Mm-hmm.
it because you want to you want to make music and give concerts and do your thing, do this thing that you love and are passionate about, and that's what I got to do for 25 years, and I feel pretty good about that. I wouldn't change a thing.
Yeah, in one you've been releasing a number of home videos, and we'll get to them in a second. But there's in the corner of them, there's a card. I think it's maybe a card or a plaque of some kind. It says, "This is your world. Shape it, or someone else will."
Oh my God, people, you can see that?
Sorry, yeah, well, yeah, it was in the corner there.
Oh man, I gotta put those in. So yeah, when I'm mixing, so I made all my records at home. There's a couple of records there where I had a few people mix it outside, but most of the records I've mixed at home. Most of the PBS specials I've mixed at home. For the last 10 years, I've made all my own music videos. The last PBS special, I directed it and edited it myself, and so it's just I love doing the stuff, and I love doing it, working at home.
Mm-hmm.
And when you spend that much time by yourself working, sometimes you can lose the thread, you can become timid. You can kind of get to the point where you sort of go, well, and not just because you're working alone, but also I find like if you're in the music industry, as great as it is, there is this kind of uh, conservatism. That I find the music industry is always chasing after whatever the last big thing is.
Mm-hmm.
Adele comes out, suddenly they're signing all these artists who sound like Adele. Or whoever, whatever the thing is right now. Or I bet in the next few years we're gonna have all sorts of people who sound like Billie Eilish. Or, the last few years, my God, how many singers suddenly start sounding like Rihanna? You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I feel like that's whatever was the big hit, everybody wants more of that. And and if you're an artist who's not doing that, it's easy to kind of want to lean towards that, or, then I can't tell you how many times I've been, got calls from record executives saying, we this smooth jazz thing is doing really well in the States. We'd like you to do a smooth jazz album, and it's like, that's great. I'm glad that it's doing well, but it's not. It doesn't really interest me. It's not my thing, and I don't. I don't feel drawn to do that. Or we think you should do a Christmas album. It's like, well, I get it. They sell well and they sell every year and all that. But that's really not, unless I suddenly discover this treasure trove of beautiful old Mexican sort of Christmas songs that I would really feel I need to record, I don't actually want to do that. I certainly don't want to do it because it's a good, it's something we can cash in on. I sort of feel like, that's the opposite of what interests me in music. And so, I'm one day I was in a store and I saw these two cards and I just kind of thought, there's something about that where you have to kind of rely on your own, you got to follow your own muse. You have to chase your own dreams, and you kind of sometimes you need reminding. If you're in the studio and you're going to do something, you suddenly find yourself about to make a sort of safe choice. It's like, no, you know what, do the thing you like. It doesn't matter if maybe it's only you that's going to like it. Maybe everybody else is going to go, oh, I don't like that. But you've got to chase it. You got to, if it's working for you, that's the choice to make. I sort of feel like there's artists need to remember that we have to have a certain level of emotional honesty that we got to keep trying to find, striving for, you know, and that's what makes art sort of real. Otherwise, you know, what is it? If it doesn't, if it's not, you know, if it's not your story you're telling, then whose is it? Do you know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah, you were talking earlier when I asked you about the open call and having people send you in like melodies they recorded out in nature. And you were talking about how they were very brave and very vulnerable to be able to do that. And I think sometimes too, even though smooth jazz is doing well or Christmas albums are doing well, for you to kind of follow your own road and chart your own path, there is a little bit of a bravery to that, and that kind of makes that makes the music more refreshing in a way because it's like it's authentic.
Well, I don't. I mean, I hope so. I hope that when people hear my music, they go, it feels real. It feels like this is something that this guy really cares about, you know, because at the end of the day, the only barometer I have is my own. I can't guess what other people are going to like. Do you know
Hmm.
what I mean? I only know what gets the hair standing up on the back of my neck. And so you know, I have to follow that. And I think it's difficult because around me, there's always people who work in an industry and they're like, oh, look at this. This is doing really well. And you sort of go, I know, it's great. It's great that whatever that thing is doing well. But ultimately, you know, I'm not that. I'm me. This is what I'm doing.
And one of the things you're currently doing or have done is really neat. You re-recorded the Tempest song, like I was asking you before, as an elder statesman, a song that you worked on years and years
I'm
ago.
trying to get comfortable with that phrase, by the way, but go ahead. Yes, the
Well, how
elder
would you want
statesman.
me? How do
Yes.
you want me to phrase it? Like,
It's
yeah.
okay. I'm stroking my long beard as you say it.
All right, that's
Go
fair
ahead.
then. There you go.
Pull out my monocle.
There you go. See, it works. And when in the post for Facebook, when you posted it, you said part of the reason for you to re-record it was that you asked yourself, "Have I changed as a musician or as a producer?" So, what is your
Mhm.
answer? Have you now that you've re-recorded this song and you put this video out? Like, what was your answer to that question?
Well, I do feel a bit like, you know, I've been doing this for 25 years. I certainly, it was a lot easier this time around than it was the first time. And I do feel that there's a certain energy in the track in this version, the new version, that the original version didn't have. And I think there's a number of reasons for that. Not the least of which is, you know, my first album I recorded at home, and I had one microphone and you know, like a one compressor and a little tiny bad mixer, and you know, I worked with what I had, and I sort of feel like it's surprising how well it does stand up considering what I was working with. Whereas, you know, since then, you know, now the amount of gear, I at one point I had a full blown huge studio that full of gear, but eventually I just had to kind of store it all in the basement because I didn't need it. And nowadays, everything's in the computer. The computers are amazing what they can do. It's like, you know, everybody has the power of, you know, what would have been an insanely great studio 30
Mm-hmm.
years ago. You can have for $500 if you want to download it. So yeah, having those tools at my disposal when I sort of started working on this version certainly made it easier. But also this time out realizing I don't have to do as much. I think there was a period because in the early days I only had a few tracks to work with. I always wished I had more. I loved Peter Gabriel and he had big studios and I always thought, oh, if I had more tracks, I could sound like Peter Gabriel. And then eventually it got to the point where I did have, you know, hundreds of tracks if I wanted them. Uh, and then once you kind of get that out of your system, you start realizing, yeah, but at the end of the day, sometimes just having a few good parts that really work well together is all you need to do to have a track really kind of have that pulse, have that energy. And I think with this version of Tempest, it was easy just to kind of go, make it simple, keep it simple, and it's going to be great.
So, as we're wrapping up, you just released "Hey," which is your first single off this new partnership between your new label, Coach House, and a Canadian label, Outside Music. What can we expect more from Coach House in the next little while? I know that there's a pandemic going on, but after that, it's kind of all over. Yeah.
Well, you know what? I think I'm switching more to, you know, up till now I've done 10 studio albums in 25 years. I'm switching more to kind of a singles model. I think the world has really changed, and I'm just going to start putting out singles, and maybe it'll be kind of more like the 50s and 60s, where you'd have enough singles together, and then maybe you'd cobble them together and make an album out of it. So I think that's what we're going to try. I'm going to certainly be producing music during the pandemic. and releasing it independently, and then you know, if whether that turns into a CD, I don't know. I'd like to try and make a video myself for each one of these things as I put them out. So that's a different process too. You know, in the past I never did a video for every song I produced. That would have, you know, taken forever. But now it's, you know, we have the ability. I have the ability to make these things at home. I have the ability to make the videos. So why not give it a try, see what happens?
Yeah, for the Tempest video that you posted on Facebook, you have even drone shots in it.
Oh yeah, a few years ago, I went down and shot a video in Colombia. A friend of mine was from Colombia, and he said, "Let's, you know, we'd written a song together, he and I, and he said we should make a video in Colombia." So just the two of us flew down, and I bought a drone for that because I just sort of thought, wouldn't it be fun to do drones? And I remember at the time feeling like this is a real extravagance, and is this absolutely necessary? And oh my God, once you start doing drone shots in your videos, it's
Hmm.
so exciting. And then, you know, then I took the drone to China, I took it to Saudi Arabia. I've, I've flown in all sorts of places where I kept thinking, am I going to get arrested? Is this
Yeah.
all right? I got to say, the drone is super fun. They look so good and they're so tiny. It's kind of amazing.
Are you thinking now visually as well when you're making your music as much as you are like musically, I guess, for lack of a better term? So you're thinking both
I,
parallel tracks?
I think so. Well, it depends. Every song is different, but yeah, certainly the song I'm working on, where people have been sending in their singing from all over the world, immediately you're seeing it. You know, I'm getting these videos. You know, where people are in wherever they are, and they're in South Africa or something. You kind of go, "Oh my God,
Hmm.
this is fantastic!" So you immediately start thinking about the videos. So yeah, I for some of these, I certainly am.
So last question, but it's an important question. Let's pretend I have a time machine and I could lend it to you. Who would you go back in time to see play live? You can go back and see anybody.
Oh my God.
I told you this was an important question.
I know. You know what? Oh, there's so many. I mean, my biggest influences uh, were, as I said, Peter Gabriel, and I got to see him live, and that was terrific. I actually got to see Paco de Lucia, John McLaughlin, and Al Di Meola play live, but it was later. These are sort of three amazing guitarists who did an
Hmm.
album called Friday Night in San Francisco, and I saw them kind of regroup to do it again, but I didn't see the original, the concert that they did in San Francisco and back in the 70s, whenever that was, and that album was so important for me as a young guitar student. I would have loved to have been there that night and actually see those guys play those solos because I remember just the years I sat trying to lift those solos and figure out what they did and how they did it and how they played so fast. Just to actually have seen it live would have been amazing.
Did you end up going to see the Pedro Gabriel tour? I forgot. I'm drawing a blank on what name of the tour was, but it was when he was in that giant, like, kind of styrofoam ball.
No, no, I
Okay,
didn't.
I'm
I
trying to remember the name of the tour. I'll have to like email you or message you for that tour. But yeah, he was phenomenal. I've only seen him live once, but it was jaw dropping. Like,
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, he is a remarkable artist. I mean, I went and visited Real World Studios at one point
that's in
just because
Bath,
I could. So, yeah, in Bath, England,
Bath,
exactly.
England.
And
Yeah.
I it was one of those things where I was in England and I was recording, I think at Elvis Costello's studio, and it was a time when the music industry was still this big thing, and you know, I pulled some strings and I got an in to
Hmm.
go and just hang out at Real World Studios, and I, you know, it was like going to Mecca for me. You know what I mean? It was like, oh my God, here I am in this sort of sacred recording studio, this thing that I've admired my entire life, this artist I hold so in such high esteem. So yeah, it was kind of amazing. And like you know, there's the big studio which is on the main floor, but then there's a really sort of creative studio up on the in the attic where Peter makes his own records, and then there's the cottage which is up the hill from the big A room, and you know, both of those actually had little tiny Oxford consoles, and you could see all these instruments like Tony Levin's bass sitting around, you know, all these things that you're just kind of like, wow, this is really exciting.
That's neat. Yeah, he needs to kind of come back a little bit more and like kind of be a little bit more prominent. We've kind of unfortunately forgot about him.
I think it's that. I also think he's an incredible perfectionist, and I think, you know, people I know who've worked with him say he'll work on things for years and years, and he just won't let them go until they're absolutely perfect. And then by the time they're perfect, he'll kind of poke his head out of the rabbit hole and look around and realize that the world has changed since he started the track
Yes.
years earlier. And he's like, oh, this isn't relevant anymore. Let me start something new. So I sort of feel like part of it is him. He's just an incredible perfectionist, which is why his stuff's so great.
Mm-hmm.
But it certainly made him way less productive. That's for sure.
Yeah. Well, you are thankfully still productive and still working. And even though you're working from home, you're still releasing some really cool videos. And we can look forward to the what's the name of the open call song that we can look forward to? Does it have a name yet? The one.
The working title is Blue Skies, and I don't know. I'm hoping to get it out within the next couple of weeks, so it should be available soon.
Okay. And where can people find you online in terms of social media, just in case then there's tour announcements and things like that as things get rescheduled?
I think if you type my name into Google, and you'll get my Facebook page, my Instagram, my YouTube channel.
Mm-hmm.
It's all. I think my Instagram is musician Jesse Cook. My Facebook is just Jesse Cook, and as is my YouTube channel. But that's where I do all my postings. I even have Twitter, but to be perfectly honest, I don't tweet much. I'll tag or I'll link, a Facebook post or something to Twitter, but I'm not a great tweeter. So there it is.
Well, that's it. And so we've covered a lot. We covered McDonald's is universal, and Happy Meals are good. We covered you kind of frowning on the phrase elder statesman. Tempest is 25 years old, and you like getting off the beaten path into following your own creative muse. So,
wow, that's great. You really kind of summarized the entire conversation. We don't even need to run the interview now. You just say that part, and we're good.
Yeah, he's a cool dude. He's seen McDonald's all around the world, basically. That's it. Like,
there you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
So,
all right, very good. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Jesse, for this time.
Thank you so much. Okay, bye-bye.
Short version of Notes and Noteworthy. It turns out I am old. I guess that's the first note. I don't know why nobody told me this. The Peter Gabriel tour I was talking about with Jesse, that was 2002. The Still Growing Up tour. I did not realize it was that long ago. It only felt like a couple of years ago. So, I'm old. The Blind Boys of Alabama opened for that show, so that was like two fantastic performances all around. This episode of My Summer Lair opened with Jesse Cook's recent Tempest remake, and it will close with Jesse's latest single, Hey. My name is Sammy Younan. If you want to say hey, I am at My Pal Sammy for Twitter, My Pal Sammy for IG, and My Pal Sammy for Facebook. All three are My Pal Sammy. Thank you so much, Jesse Cook, for sitting down with me, and most importantly, for sharing your music. I've been around for most of your 25 years, and hopefully will be around for your next 25. And thank you so much for listening to me in the Netflix world. Jesse Cook, yo.